Hello everyone and welcome back to JavaScript Lessons on Codecademy. So last time we covered what we have learned so far, everything from variables to the switch statement, a bit of for loops and that. And I also promised that we will be doing objects today, but we're actually not going to be doing the same type of objects that we did before. So these are quite a bit different from what I'm seeing now. So let's actually just get straight into it. This is very interesting and it's very useful, so please stay tuned. So in this lesson we focus on the fifth data type, which is objects. This data type is a little bit more complex. So this is why we're 65% into the course. Objects allow us to represent in code real-world things and entities, such as a person or bank account. We do this by storing all relevant information in one place, an object. So back to what you can do with this is you can also represent, if you're thinking of a game, you can represent a character. The character needs bags, he needs armor, I don't know. Then you can also represent a bag, which is your inventory, and other things. So how do we create an object? It's like declaring a variable or defining a function. We use var. So let's just follow this along, followed by the name of the object and an equal sign. So why not call it character? Or that might actually be a reserved name. I will call it, I don't know, my character. Yeah, that shouldn't be reserved. And equals, so followed by the name of the object and an equal sign. Each object then starts with that and ends with that. That's what my understanding is. Make sure to declare an object called, oh, he's supposed to be called Bob, not my character. Okay, that's interesting. So there's actually not much after the equal sign except for the curly brackets. So let's move on. So properties. Let's review what we previously covered. Each piece of information we include in an object is known as a property. Think of a property like a category label that belongs to some object. When creating an object, each property has a name, followed by a colon, and then the value of that property. For example, if we want Bob's object to show he is 34, we type in age is 34. In this case, we have Spencer, who is aged 22 apparently. Age is the property and 34 is the value of this property. When we have more than one property, they are separated by commas. So in this case, we have both age and country. The last property does not end with a comma, as we can see here. So this is actually similar to what we did before, but I think that we will also be covering functions inside them, hopefully. See the console for the object I have created about myself. Can you create an object me that describes your age and which country you live in? So let's do that then. So var me equals, and then we want age 15, comma, country UK. Oops, that should be a string. There we go. Save and submit code, and that's all fine. So let's move on. Accessing properties. Now that we know how to make objects with properties, let's look at how we actually use them. So notice our example object Bob and Suzanne. In this case, both Bob and Suzanne each have two properties, which are both name and age. So after creating our object, we have added code to access these properties, which is this part, I believe. So we have accessed Bob's name and Bob's age. Notice that we save Bob's name, Bob Smith, into the global variable name 1. We do this on line 10. So, okay, name 1, where does, oh, okay. So name 1 equals Bob Smith and age 1 equals 30. Finish the exercise by filling in the code in lines 13 and 14 to access the name and age for Suzanne and save those into the given global variables. So as I remember, this is actually just the shorthand of doing it. There are two other ways, I believe, of doing it, but we will just stick to these, seeing as that's what they gave us to work with. So let's get Suzanne's by doing Suzanne.name semicolon, and then Suzanne.age. semicolon. Save and submit, and as we can see, everything works fine. Actually, I haven't gotten a yellow triangle yet. You can read from before what I mean. Not relevant, so let's just move on. In the last exercise, we access properties using what is known as dot notation. It's quite self-explanatory. So to access a property, we use object name dot property name. So for example, what we did last time was bob.name. In addition to dot notation, we can also access properties using bracket notation, which we have done previously in two or three lessons ago, I believe it was. So in this case, we use whatever the object name is, and then in the strings, as a string, you put whatever the property name is to access the desired property. Note that we need quotation marks around the property's name. So that compared to the previous one, this one needs quotation marks, the previous one didn't. So this takes longer to write because it has 4 extra characters. So it can sometimes come to personal preference, but it really, I don't know, 4 characters won't really save you that much. So take a look at our next example object called dog. So the dog is a species of greyhound, weighs 60 units, whatever the units are, and it has an age of 4. I don't know if that's for dog years or human years. So notice on line 8 how we save the dog species into a variable by accessing the species property of dog using bracket notation. So it's talking about this line 8. So what we need to do is use bracket notation, so something like this, to save the dog's weight and age into variables as well. So that's pretty simple. I will just copy this and paste and paste. But instead of species, in the second line we will have weight, and on the last line we will have age. And there we go. So that's another way of accessing variables within an object. So let's move on. And there is also another way apparently. The method we've used to create objects uses object literal notation, that is creating an object with curly brackets and defining properties within the brackets. So that's what we did before, so something like this. But another way of creating objects without using the curly brackets is to use the keyword new, so something like this here, so the second line. This is known as creating an object using a constructor. The new object keyword creates an empty object when followed by object parentheses. So the general syntax is variable, then the name of the object that you wanted to have, equals new, and object with parentheses and then a semicolon. We then have to fill this object with properties and labels though, otherwise it's quite useless. How do we do that? Check out the creation of the object Bob to see what we do. We create the name property for the object Bob by using bob.name and assigning that to a value. Contrast this to how we define properties in lines 6 and 7 for Suzanne1 object. So for Bob, we construct it using a constructor, and then to Bob we add bob.name, which we assign to be Bob Smith, and bob.age, which we assign to be 30. You don't put var here, notice that, because you're adding it onto Bob, which is an object. But compared to Suzanne, in Suzanne you literally put it inside of the curly brackets and it's one whole body. Here you can do this on any other line. So if I move this to here and then I try to access Bob's name, so something like it's still going to work. So if this line is here or here, it's going to work in either way. It doesn't matter. So inspect the Suzanne1 object carefully and note the use of object literal notation. So this is object literal notation. Use constructor notation to create Suzanne2, which should have the same properties and values as Suzanne1. So just for convenience, I will move this back to here. And so we need to make Suzanne2, which we need to do like this, equals new, and then object with parentheses. And then we need to add, I'm guessing, her name and age. So Suzanne2 dot name, and that's not how you spell name, equals, I guess her name can still be Suzanne Jordan. There we go. And her age can still be 24. And that what's printed out is from Bob Smith. But as we can see, this works and it follows the same pattern as this does. If you have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments. So let's move on. We've learned how to make objects in two different ways. Both are valid and you can use which one you prefer. Let's practice how to use both one more time. Okay? So I would personally use the literal notation instead of putting it into different parts, but I guess sometimes it could be useful to do the other one. So I would usually use literal notation and then add onto it different parts if I needed to. I don't really see that much use in the other one, which doesn't really give you anything to work with at the start. It's just a personal preference, so you guys can also have your personal opinion on that. So use literal notation to finish the Snoopy object. So this means curly brackets straight away. Remember, literal notation is the one where, okay, we fill it with curly brackets with separate properties and values with colons. Each property with colons doesn't mean with commas. Oh, because the other one had, okay, I will explain what it means. Each property is separated by a comma. So Snoopy should have two properties, a species of beagle, I don't know how that's pronounced, and age of 10. So basically what it means by colons is species and colon, whatever you want it to be, not equals to. So we want it to be beagle. I will just pronounce it as that. Sorry if you're dog lovers. I like dogs myself, but I haven't researched it that much. Then make body a 5-year-old golden retriever using constructor notation. So that means new object with a semicolon there. And we need to say body dot whatever, we need to add age equals 5 and colon, semicolon I don't know why I'm saying colon so many times. This notation involves using the keyword new to create an empty list, then we fill it with using dot notation. An empty object, not empty list. Okay, so there was a problem with your syntax. What have we done wrong? Oh, we forgot the comma. There we go. Body should have a property named species that is set to golden retriever. I didn't infer that from the code, so let's just do that. Body.species equals golden retriever. Can I copy and paste it from here? Probably can. There we go. So these are single quotation marks and double quotation marks, I think, are used interchangeably, which is why both of these work, if that doesn't make sense. But as you guys can see, both of these ways work, and if I was to demonstrate it, which I actually will, you will see that they achieve the same thing. So we do something like print Snoopy, and that's not the correct syntax for that, it's console.log. I'm too used to Python. And console.log, the other one, which is body. Let's see what happens. So for Snoopy, as we can see, we get that he's a beagle and an age of 10. For body, we get golden retriever, age of 5, and it's printed out in the exact same way. If you were to change the order in which these two were added, so say put that before that, it's probably going to put it the other way around. Yes, as you can see, but that doesn't really change much usually. So let's move on. Nice job. Let's do one more example to get the hang of making objects with desired properties. So we need to create an object named bicycle that has 3 properties. So Okay, I will do object literal notation because I prefer it. Bicycle, spelled like that. And we need to have a speed colon 0, comma, let's not forget the comma this time, a gear of 1, and the frame material of carbon fiber. I don't think that's the English spelling of fiber. I mean, I think that's the American spelling of fiber, but oh well, I just have to go with it. So you can do this exact same thing by doing this equals new object semicolon and then just adding these on, which I will copy and paste to do. Bicycle, it's such an awkward way to spell it, I don't even know why. Bicycle, there we go. Instead of that equals, instead of the colon you put an equal sign and semicolon there. Oops, without the comma actually. These two things are going to have the exact same result. So if we do, let's actually call this bicycle 1. Let's console.log both. And let's just copy and paste that. Bicycle 1. Let's rerun that. Save and submit. Oh, okay. I don't know what happened there. So that's the first one. The second one doesn't get printed. What if we replace them in case it doesn't like what it's seeing? Okay, that's quite weird. I don't know why it's doing that actually. Dot gear equals that. Huh, interesting. Something's actually going wrong. I don't know if it's because of me. No, that looks quite normal. So, oh, I know why. I know why. I know what I did wrong. I did this wrong. It's not bicycle. We're adding things to bicycle 1 here. And there we go. That was the problem. So as you can see, both of these two work the same way. I mean, they do the exact same thing. So I say that it's up to personal preference which one you use, because as you can see, even from the console.log, nothing gets changed. So sorry that we're not actually covering the objects that I was thinking of. Hopefully we can this course does actually cover those, but I apologize again. But yeah, so until next time, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and goodbye.